Well, I'm talking today with number one Amazon best-selling author, John Browning. John, thanks for being here today.
And it is a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. It's always fun to have conversations with you, especially as we're talking about your book, Build a Life, Not a Portfolio. And today we're talking about chapter 5, John. And it's very intriguing. The chapter title is How to Avoid Common Mistakes. And you started off with a quote. I just want to read this, really fascinating. Losing money in the market is not the enemy. Living in constant fear of losing money in the market is. I thought that was a really good quote. Well done.
Well, thank you.
Well, you're welcome. So what counsel do you have for people or thoughts around how to avoid common mistakes? What are some of those mistakes that we make?
Oh, there's a whole litany of them, and you can find them all in the book, of course.
Right,
but,
of course.
The first one that I start with in this chapter is the not including everyone. Really common mistake, especially with married couples. Even more so when they're a little further along in their marriage. They're generally speaking, not stereotyping, but generally speaking, there is one member of the couple that is the financial person. And I find that it's 50-50. Sometimes it's a guy, sometimes it's a gal. It's just generally one that pays more attention, is more interested, whatever.
Yep.
And there's one that could care less. Just make sure we got food on the table. We got a retirement. I just want to know it's going to be there, right?
That's right.
So what tends to happen is the husband or the wife, whichever one, is that, oh, you know what? She'll just do what I tell her. I'll just attend the meetings.
Yeah, doesn't work.
No, I'm okay. A little bit of that is fine. I get it. But it's important that, especially when you're first starting out the relationship, that you sit across from both members of a very vested interest in your financial future and where you want to go. And really fascinating when I speak with couples is I will just see, and that's why I say we've got to at least do a Zoom call, if not in person, because you'll watch. And the one person that's sort of the dominant one, the one that likes to talk, right? They'll be saying, yeah, this is what we want, and this and this and this. And you'll see the other person, they'll like sort of get squirm a little bit, and they'll be like, sigh. And you'll see it. And I, every single time, and this is a rule with me, I will call that out.
Good.
And I'll do it in a humorous way. And I'm like, oh, you know what? It looks like Jennifer there maybe has a little bit different point of view. What do you think, Jennifer? And sometimes, Jennifer, I'll just call her Jennifer here. Sometimes she'll like, oh, no, it's nothing. I'm like, I'm going to challenge you on that. And if this is a good sign that we're not a good fit to work together, is if the other person says, oh, don't worry about that, or dismisses the person. I know this is not going to be a good, first of all, the relationship's in trouble. And second of all, it's not going to be a good client for us to work with.
That's good. That's brilliant.
So,
common. Yeah. That's a very common mistake. And to avoid it comes back to what we've talked about years and years, or through all these episodes, is communication, conversations. And that's exactly what you're talking about. What about, I know with what you do is very emotional. Yeah. And I know people many times get emotionally involved in these decisions. Any counsel or thoughts or stories around how emotions lead us?
It's really interesting. I actually had an article. It's on the website. There's a link to it. They wrote an article about kind of the way I approach things. And you'll hear a lot in the financial field about you got to get rid of the emotions. You can't be emotional and a good investor. And there's some truth to that. There's this whole thing back in the early 2000s, I think, late 90s, early and all the way through, through 2010, 15, called quantitative investing. And it was supposed to be the best thing ever. You take all the emotions out of it. You make the, XYZ trade when all the numbers line up in this way.
Yeah.
And you never deviate from that. And that was great until it wasn't. Until suddenly we found out, right? Suddenly all these folks found out that there are actually now I think it's 7.6 billion emotional people on the face of planet Earth, Michael. There's a lot of us. Every single one of us makes decisions emotionally. When you have that going on, those decisions impact the market.
Yeah.
It's not quantitative.
Right.
And there's a chapter later on in the book that we'll get to called the idea of a complex adaptive system.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds really scary, but we'll talk about that later. And that's the reason that the markets are a complex adaptive system, is people just don't understand how much emotions affect our decision making and thus impact the markets and the economy.
Yeah.
Great story. It's in the book about my Harley.
Yeah.
I completely admit this, and it's not the only time this has happened, Michael.
This is great.
But I wanted to get, so I had a little Honda Shadow, just kind of
which is a motorcycle.
That's a motorcycle. And it was too small for me. I'm not a small individual, for those who haven't seen me before. And I looked a little ridiculous on it, and actually it was a little bit dangerous, right? Because when you're too big for a bike, it's easy to get off center, and it's just not great. And I did actually lay that one down. I actually had a wreck on that one, and that was not fun.
No, those are not. I've had a few.
So my wife said, well, I know you're not going to be logical about this. I know you're going to get back on a bike after I'd had my wreck. She said, but you have to get a bigger one, and it needs to have roll bars on it so you don't crush your leg like you did last time. So I was like, okay, great. That's the only parameters. We're good. Harley store, here we come. So I went with my son, and we looked at all these different bikes. I did once. I never buy a vehicle new, generally speaking. I always buy the used ones. It's again, there's my logic. It's generally better value. We had these great Harleys there, and I found kind of the model that I wanted, and I looked there was two that were sitting kind of next to each other. We even pulled them out so we could really compare them, right? We both side by side. One was black with a little bit of chrome on it. It was cheaper by a couple $1,000, right? And I really liked it. It had the same engine, basically the same features, everything else. And there was another one, a couple $1,000 more, had chrome on it all over, and it had red flake paint. Beautiful, but it was more expensive, and there really wasn't any difference between the two bikes. And the salesperson there was a great sales guy. He did not pressure me either way, and he was talking to my son as I was looking hard. I was struggling with this decision because I'm a logical guy.
Yeah.
So right now, about 9 years later, the red one's sitting in my garage.
There you go.
Yeah. Right. It was an emotional decision. And
That's
you know what, though? I really enjoy it. I have a blast on that. It's part of my best life, is being able to get out and ride that. I just put a picture out on LinkedIn, Facebook, and all that of my grandson, who's 1 year old, combining two of the things that define my best life, which is my grandson right now, and all my grandchildren, by the way. But my grandson was in my arms, and my wife had put my helmet on because I had my bike there next to me. For some reason, my daughter would not allow me to take the 1 year old grandson on the bike.
Can't understand that at all.
Yeah. But he was fascinated, and he had his hands. It was like, whoa, where did Grandpa go?
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Riding my motorcycle and then find my best life. But so the common mistake is thinking that we can totally take emotions out of it. Emotions are who we are.
Yeah.
It's part of our innermost being. And if we take that emotion out of it, if we don't acknowledge it, it's actually a big mistake that a lot of financial advisors actually make as well. And they kind of almost guilt or ridicule their clients when they have, say, a down market, and they get emotional about that. They spent huge chunks of their lives earning that money, So it's okay for them to be a little upset, and it's not what they do. They don't understand it's not their profession. That's why they have us as financial advisors.
Right.
So acknowledging it and even taking action on it from an emotional perspective, because at the end of the day, what we're trying to create is a life that you love. And to the quote, it's not losing the money that's the real problem, because there are ways to invest in which there are recovery paths, and you deal with your investment horizon and all that other boring stuff. But it's that fear of losing money that makes you lose sleep. If that's you, then we need to get you more conservative. And the trade-off there is your portfolio is not likely to grow as fast.
Right.
Take you a little bit longer. So it's the difference. Do you want the Jeep Cherokee going over the hill like this, or do you want the Lincoln Continental that's going to slowly take you up the side of the mountain?
That's right. Well, that's those are just a couple of the common mistakes people make, and I know your book has some more of them, and I know in conversations with you, you have hundreds of them, because we're emotional beings, and you've been doing this for a long time. So let me just encourage people to reach out. GuardianRockWealth.com, John Browning, get a copy of his #1 Amazon bestselling book, Build a Life, Not a Portfolio. Read it, learn from John, reach out to him, have a conversation, schedule a meeting with him. You'll just talk. You'll see if you're a good fit before he gives you any kind of counsel or financial advice at all. He's going to make sure that you two are on the same page, and then you can ask him about some of the other common mistakes to avoid. He's a wealth of knowledge. He's put a lot of it in his book, but he has a lot more in his head and in his heart that he really wants to share. So John Browning, thank you for who you are, for what you do, and for helping people build a life and not just a portfolio.
Thanks for having me.